I think we need to go live as well. Good evening, everyone who has just joined us for this webinar today, entitled Measuring and Improving Employee Engagement. You're very welcome to this particular session. I am very grateful that you have chosen to join us this evening and listening to us. So I would like to ask you to tell us where you're logging in from. So if you are able to, on the chat, just share in the usual webinar fashion. My name is so and so, and I'm joining in from such and such a place. My name is Vicky Karuga, and I am joining you from Nairobi. And it's a pleasure to be here. And we can use the first 5 minutes to see if we can get more people coming into the webinar so that at least we give a few more people the chance to join in and listen in to what we have to say today. So feel free, let me know where you're joining us from. We're also going to do a short poll right now. What do you think the average level of engagement is in Kenya, percentage-wise? How many? 20% people engaged, 50% people engaged, 80% people engaged. So we're going to have a little poll. So on the chat, I'll put in a poll and let me know what do you think is the average percentage level of engagement at the workplace? What do you think is the average percentage level? As you tell us where you're joining us in from, I'm seeing Mercy Kinothia is joining us from Joro. Welcome, Mercy. Francis Kanguria is joining us from Nairobi. Bahati Karashani is joining us from Dar es Salaam. Karibu sana. Then we have Rhoda Benaib joining us from the UK. Welcome. We have John Kimirei. John, how are you? How have you been? It's been some time. Thank you very much for joining us. And as you please go on, please let us know where you're joining us from. Okay, so as we wait for others to join in, I have launched a poll on the group. And I am now launching it. So just give me your answers. So what do you think the average percentage level of engagement is at the workplace? Is it 20%? Is it 50%? Is it 80%? Feel free to use 50%. I can already see answers coming in. We have 20%. We have still 20%. What is the average? What is the average level of engagement in the workplace? Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of the answers are going to 50% with two answers or three at 50%. Actually, the vote is split between 50-50. 50 says quite engaged, and then 50 saying, 50% saying 20% engagement, and then 50% saying it's 50% engagement. So I would think that, well, it's about 50% because they tell us that according to the latest Gallup report, 51% of employees are disengaged in the workplace. So if about 50% are disengaged in the workplace, then we can say that about 50% are also engaged in the workplace. But the surprising uh, thing here is that even if we have about 50% engaged in the workplace, those that we call actively engaged are, they range between, I think, 25 and 35%. So you have active engagement, and then you have engaged. And then, of course, you have disengaged, then you have actively disengaged. So what is a good engagement level? Like, what would you say if you were measuring engagement? And you can share with me on the chat, what would you say is a decent number, percentage-wise? And if you get this number, you'd possibly say that, okay, I think the organization that I'm working for or that I'm stewarding is engaged. What do you think that would be? Feel free to type. What do you think is a good measure? Is it 10, is it 50%? Is it 60%? Is it 70? Is it 80%? Is it 90%? In your experience and in your opinion? Okay, so Marcy says 80%. That's a good number. Anyone else? And then Bahati also says 80%. Okay, so 80% is close enough. I think the minimum that is given when you Google this particular statistics is 70%. That's the minimum I've seen. And then it goes, of course, sometimes to 80%. And then it depends on the organization. What have you set your engagement rate at? So if you have a benchmark, so you ran your first engagement survey, it came in at 60%. That allows you to know how far you want to really raise your engagement levels. I know some organizations that also hit the 90% bracket, and I think that is no mean feat to have an organization that is engaged up to 90%. So the other question I have is, what is considered a tolerable level of disengagement? What would that be? And maybe that's food for thought. What can you consider as a tolerable level for disengagement? What is that threshold like? So as we continue to think about that, I think I want to now start my presentation and really talk about why we came here and what is it that we wanted to share with you this evening. So I am joined by my colleague here. His name is Shimron. And my other colleague, she's also called Liz, and they will be also sharing on the call today ways that you can reach out to us, and also at the end of the call we will be asking you to be able to talk to us, and we can be able to give you one of the things that we do as part of profiles or continuing engagement with organizations that you can utilize to be able to raise levels of engagement in your organization. So I assume that you can see my screen, and I will go right onto it. So what is employee engagement? The thing is, employee engagement is the emotional, that is very important, the emotional commitment and involvement and enthusiasm of an employee towards their work, their team, and their organization. So people don't just work for the paycheck. They are aligned and they live for the purpose. They take ownership for their work. In fact, when we measure engagement, sometimes we look at the 4 Ps, which is people who work there praise where they work, they love where they work, they speak good things about where they work, they persist, so they will push on even when things are tough. They will they will try the best that they can to go through the work patches and fulfill whatever it is that they're meant to fulfill. They will grow, so they will perform fast, so to their very best of their ability. And I forget what the last P is for. Maybe someone can share with me on the chat, but there are 4 Ps that we measure. And these ones really speak to people owning the purpose of the organization, understanding it, seeing their unique contribution to the organizational success, and of course, feeling as if they're part of the wheel that moves the organization to wherever it wants to go. And as I shared earlier, you can see these statistics from Gallup State of the Global Workplace Report of 2023, where I was saying that even if we have about 50%, the actively engaged employees are actually not that many. And here they say it's about 23%. And if you look up, you will see some other percentages that are a bit larger than 23%. So depending on which statistic you're looking at, it could be as much as 23%, it could be 36%. All of it is just pointing to the fact that we still want more engagement in the workplace. So what are the results of not having an engaged employees? So I'm sure you can get this if you Googled them, but we all know what those are. In terms of attitude to the jobs that we have, engaged employees, of course, have a more positive mindset. They're more proactive and they are quick to look for solutions. When we have disengaged employees, it's the opposite. We are passive. And sometimes being passive is worse than being actively. You're there, and so you're filling in a space, but you're really not giving anything. So when they're negative, at least you're getting feedback from someone who's negative or someone who's cynical. But when someone is passive, you're not getting any information. So you don't know whether they're for you, you don't know whether they're against you. They're just there, they're just filling in a seat. And that, I think, for me, is a lot worse than having even negative employees who at least voice their opinion and you know what they're unhappy about. The other thing is about work ethic. I talked about perform and discretionary effort. When people are engaged, they give you discretionary effort. They go above and beyond their assigned tasks. And usually you'll find startups displaying this sort of work ethic, where the people who work there are so locked on with the founder, they're locked on with the purpose of the organization. They really buy into the vision, and so they can commit more of themselves to get tasks done instead of doing the bare minimum, again, just to get by and be recognized. Commitment, people who are actively engaged are emotionally invested. They have meetings, outside meetings with the team. And people who are not engaged, of course, are detached. I work from 9 to 5, sometimes not even putting in that much effort when I do what I have to do. And that's that. People who are engaged show initiative. They suggest improvements. So the perfect is the last P. I forgot and now remembered. They are constantly perfecting. If we're doing something, can we do it better? I've seen this being suggested somewhere. So they are trying to see, how can we perfect what it is that we do? How can I also perfect myself so that I'm able to give a bit more? So as opposed to, of course, a disengaged employee, they collaborate better because they are engaged and they have emotionally invested into the team. They perform better, consistently higher, and they focus on the goals and the targets as well as quality results, as opposed to disengaged employees. They have great customer interaction. They speak about the organization as if they own the organization. Well, not in those exact words, but they own the process, they own the delivery, they own the outcome. And this means that they will be a lot more attentive to what needs to be done when it comes to building relationships, being able to take care of things, and engaged employee that have absenteeism. So what are the other things we see when it comes to engagement metrics? Of course, with engagement turnover, When you have highly engaged employee, Gallup says that we are 59% less likely to look for a new job in the next 12 months. And you can imagine just the cost of hiring. I mean, that is really difficult. So if we look at the attrition costs that organizations incur because of turnover, and we can do simple things to raise engagement so that we have less attrition, then I think we stand to impact the bottom line directly. Innovation. In a world where things are constantly changing, you'll find, especially now, that engaged employees will tap into things like AI and all the generational languages that we have to see how they can make work easier around the workplace, to understand more about how they can develop AI apps and bots that can be able to make the work run much easier. High engaged employees, of course, are more productive, and we say that they show up to 17% higher productivity. So 17% means that if you are producing 1,000 items, 17% looks like 170 more. So, I mean, no mean feat at all. Customer satisfaction, you have a rating of 10%. I know an organization that rate employee engagement, and then they go and do a client satisfaction survey as well. And the two go hand in hand. The day that employee engagement was down, and that's where they started, their customer satisfaction went down. And in fact, the saying goes, focus on the workplace. And if you focus on the workplace, then the people will focus on the marketplace. So when it comes to performance, companies with highly engaged employees are, of course, seen to be 21% more profitable. And absenteeism, which is a big one that costs us as organizations a lot of money. Disengaged employees have 37% higher absenteeism. That's more than a third. So if we look at all these statistics, you can understand why the engagement as a metric is a really important one, because it drives so many other metrics that we all look at when it comes to talent and talent development and management. So what are the root causes of disengagement? The first one that we found when we were busy doing this research of why do employees disconnect is because of poor leadership. And not just through this simple things we have put here, like micromanagement, promoting a culture of blame or fear or favoritism. Sometimes it's because I think that leadership has not been taught the skill of leading. So they have been promoted, but not a lot of effort has been put into really developing them into wholesome leaders. So they still do some things that are not very effective around leadership. And when this happens, if you are promoted as leaders and you keep growing as a leader, you fall back to whatever level of competence you have of leadership. And if this has not grown, you fall back to the technical ways of leading, which means that the employee experience overall will have much wanting. Statistics there show that 65% of employees cite leadership issues as a significant barrier to them enjoying the places that they work. The second cause that we found was poor recruitment practices. And this could be one, the fact that people who come in are not aligned with the organization's values or even with the team values, and this causes friction. It causes disruption. So for instance, if one of the values that we hold true at Profiles is that we expect quality and excellence, and we expect you to go above and beyond to deliver this. And maybe that means that for us, we are looking for people who are willing to put in the extra time. And we find people who, at the stage of life they are at, are not able to work with us to accomplish this, and that means that we are going to be misaligned. I have a client who one of their values is actually the ability to make quick decisions. They value people and processes that deliver quick decisions. And so what happens is that any person who comes to that organization and will struggle if they have not developed a framework of decision making, and that's just because of the area of work that they're in. They're willing to take the risk that is required with quick decision making. So when you're not willing to take that risk as well, you struggle as an employee because you're busy thinking about the repercussions of your decision making, and they're wondering, why didn't you just make a decision in the first place? And we keep moving. The second part is not having robust recruitment systems that allow you to consider the personalities and the interests of the people coming in. So does the person really fit to that role in terms of their values only, as we mentioned, but also in terms of their behavioral style, their thinking style as well, so that we can say for this particular role, the mental capabilities required to perform this role are aligned to the particular person who's coming in. And we find that I think that ability to have a cognitive role fit, I think from research says that that's the largest indicator that someone is going to stay in a role. The other things that you can check for is motivational interest. If a role requires an entrepreneurial mindset, do you have assessments that check whether someone's through the Holland's Code is motivated to or has entrepreneurship as one of the interests that they have, or creativity as one of the interests that they have. So not having that robust culture of checking for role fit and not checking for role mismatch can also lead to disengagement as people struggle to stay on the job. Another root cause for disengagement is communication. And communication results to many unsaid messages and development of a lack of trust. And when we don't have clear channels of communication, when we don't have intentional messages being sent out, so especially by leadership or the organization to employees, we're very intentional sometimes in out messages to the external public about who we are, what we do, why we are here. And with that same intentionality, we should turn it inward and be able to also fully communicate with the people we work with on the same things. The other thing is when we as leaders say one thing, but we display another. So we of course say that, one example is we say everything is good, everything is going on according to plan, but we all know that the macroeconomy is suffering a little bit, and the way the leader is behaving, he's probably even applying for different jobs elsewhere as well, is not the same as the communication that is giving. So are we also training our leaders to be effective communicators and to be able to deliver the message of the organization in a meaningful and effective way? So what does disengagement cost you? Actively disengaged employees cost about 8.8 trillion in productivity. And this is just from another study from Gallup. And this is from, of course, lowered productivity. We saw what disengagement does. A lack of innovation, so getting your competitors getting ahead of you. Of course, the cost of absenteeism and attrition, the cost of poor customer service, the cost of loss of top talent, because if they're not engaged, they're going to move on. And I could go on with what happens when you actually do not focus on this thing called disengagement. And so it is within, or rather, it is an important metrics to always keep in mind. And it is a very simple one to check against and to measure. And out of it, then you are able to also see what other areas you can support your talent through, to be able to also, for example, engagement is one thing, but engagement is also driven through ensuring that your people have adequate learning opportunities, so they're constantly learning. They feel that the place that they work is has enough initiatives to support them to grow their role and to grow beyond their role into other roles. Being able to provide an environment that lends itself to people wanting to stay there, comfortable enough, it is safe. free from physical hazards. Some of the things that we might take for granted, cultivating cultures, a value system that keeps employees, um, well-being put in place. For example, having a focus on when people are mothers, when people are fathers, understanding what we need to do to ensure that we don't have burnout, when we are highly stressed, because of course, workplaces have different levels of stress. How do we put that into consideration? Equipping leaders with the ability to lead, equipping them with the ability to build teams, and equipping them with the ability to also build safe spaces and build psychological safety as well. So all these things, also increasing the brand, growing the brand of the organization, ensuring that it is a respected brand. People are proud to be associated with it. What's its purpose? What is it doing for the community? What's the impact that the organization has on the community? Being able to also speak about these things openly as an organization, wherever it is in the communities that the organization impacts. So speaking to the brand of the organization, I love to work at this place. This place gives me opportunities to grow and to learn. In this place, I can see how I can also grow in the organization. And even if I don't grow in the organization and leave, I've given very great service to the organization as well. And I have loyalty to the organization or to the company. Even when I leave, because of the experience that I've had, equipping all of us with the skills of being great team players, understanding ourselves and others, and basically will need article emotional Sorry about that. I think the internet was not great. I'm hoping that we have it better now. I think Liz, give me the heads up if you can't hear me. Thanks. So coming to the conclusion, we would like to introduce to you the Emotional Culture Index tool. And the Emotional Culture Index tool is just a very simple tool that we use to measure um, just what people are feeling in the organization. So we have what we do is we come to you and we find out what are the things you would like to check on. And these things are in terms of values or emotions that are happening in the workplace. So you can see on the screen here a very simple um, diagram that has 6 pleasant values on one side and 6 unpleasant values on the other side. We are a company that does a lot of work around emotional intelligence through the brand called Genos that you can see the brand is up on the top right of the screen. And we believe that workplaces that experience more positive emotions actually outperform workplaces that experience less positive emotions. And right here on the screen, it's a small study that was done in 2011 with the same thesis. So what you find in the blue is an organization that was experiencing more positive emotions and also had the label of being a high performing workplace, as opposed to a low performing workplace, which possibly wasn't meeting its KPIs. and their workplace performance index. So what this study found out was that workplaces that experienced more pleasant emotions, say for example, they felt more valued, they felt proud, they felt more optimistic, and they were more cheerful, outperformed to a degree workplaces that did not experience the same emotions to the same extent. Now, the interesting thing also is that both workplaces, of course, experience levels of anxiety, they experience levels of worry, they experience levels of fear as well. And you can see at some point the difference between the not so pleasant emotions around the red and the blue is not as big as the gap of pleasant emotions in both organizations. So what this study confirmed was that sometimes we may not have control over the things that bring about negative emotions or unpleasant emotions. For example, we may not be in control of what will cause anxiety at the workplace. For example, when we had COVID, there was a lot of anxiety and stress and worry at the workplace. But the organizations that saw agility in their talent, the organizations that saw performance still maintained or even grow, were organizations that focus on what they could do. And that was cultivating a more positive and pleasant workplace. And they did this not by, as I say, probably having a team fun activities. They did this by ensuring that communication was done promptly. People were kept aware of what was happening, promoting the brand, celebrating the quick wins that were happening, even amidst the crisis that we had, making employees feel that whatever it is that they were doing counted and was valued. And so they focused on the things that they could do to make people feel like they belonged, checking in, having rituals around teams, checking in on each other. And so even if the levels of anxiety, stress, and worry are still rather high, and they're not that different from workplaces that don't perform, they were the levels of positive emotions was much higher than in workplaces that don't perform. And so we find that when we look at the collective emotion in employees, we find that they then form behaviors that we see at the workplace. So we might not be able to see the emotions that are driving the behavior we are seeing, or that are even driving the values that people are then embodying, but we can see the behavior that is as a result of that. For example, when people are really stressed, or when they're reactive, or when they're anxious, we get a little bit more reactive. And if you've been in a team that is going through a high stress assignment, people can get off at each other at any moment. Two people can decide to fight over a very small thing, like I usually use the example of a stapler. And that just shows you that the levels of stress at that particular point, people don't have a meter that slows them down. They don't have that time to count 1 to 5. So they get very stressed. And so they react. And if you find a culture that is very reactive, it means that possibly measures have not been put into place, maybe for even financial boundaries. Like, their salaries are late. So that's one point of stress. The management is pushing them hard because, people want, there's a lack of, so we are pushing hard to get more, and so on and so forth. And I think you catch my drift. So you find that people who are exhausted, can barely bring themselves to work. We haven't checked. People who are also problem focused is because they're worried. So checking this kind of underlying emotions and what people are feeling helps to explain some of the behavioral patterns that you see in terms of the people that you have around you. And whether it's in a team or whether it's for the whole organization, the ECI does give you some valuable information around the collective emotions that are happening in the particular organization. So what do we do when we mean the ECI? We deploy this tool and ask people questions around the values or the emotions that you feel you want to check for. So what unpleasant emotions do you want to check for in an organization? So do you want to check the stress levels? Do you want to check the levels of worry? Do you feel people are feeling afraid? Maybe you're going through a difficult time. You want them to give you that information. Do you want to understand whether people are feeling treated fairly or feeling mistreated and treated unfairly? Do you want them to tell you whether they feel they have adequate resources to do the work that they can? And then what are the ones that you want to check for? Do you want them to check whether they feel valued? Do you want to check whether they feel optimistic? Do you want to check whether they feel informed? So all these words that you see around here, you can actually change and you can play with them at any given time. So it checks to see how often do people feel that it is fair to feel this particular way, and then it checks to see how often are they actually feeling this particular way. So the ECI for us is free, and we offer this tool to organizations as a dipstick to try and see what is it that you want to what is it that people want to tell you, but possibly they might not tell you verbally, or you cannot get that information because it takes a long time. So we deploy it. We come to you. We find out what are the emotions or the values you want to check against, and then we create that for you. And then we allow you to get then a personalized debrief of your overall results. And these results can also be delivered in terms of demographics. So one of the things is, do you want to check in your group of people what the men are feeling, what the women are feeling? Do you want to check for the age groups 10 to 2, 10 years in the organization, 2 years in the organization, 5 years in the organization? Do you also want to check in terms of generations, Generation X, millennials? So you can also stratify that information in terms of if you have subsidiaries, if you have departments, find out what each department is feeling. And this gives you a more personalized view of what's really happening in your organization. This also gives you one free consultations with our experts on how to improve the employee engagement in your workplace based on the results that we receive. So if you feel that this offer is for you, all you have to do is scan the code that is on the screen right now. I believe you can all see it. Or if you can't scan the code right now, then what you need to do is just reach out to us. There is I think Liz will share up an email address that you can write to us, or a number that you can actually WhatsApp us. But I do encourage you, please scan the code. It's a very simple code. It takes you onto a page where you have the contact person and your email address. And once you submit that, we shall reach out and get to you, and then take you through what it means to get the ECI, the process, and have it delivered for you in no time. It takes about 2 weeks to deploy and complete, and I think it starts you off on the right footing when it comes to getting a dipstick check on what is required. So that's it for today. We encourage you, please take this opportunity, and we promise that you shall gain some insights where you can take action and you can actually then help drive performance. So without further ado, that's my presentation for you today. I welcome any questions that you might have. I will leave that QR code on the screen so that you can scan it at your own pleasure. If you have any questions, please put it on the chat and I shall answer it. Or if you have any comments as well, put it on the chat and I shall answer it. You can also raise up your hand and I will allow you to speak up and ask any questions that you might have. So over to you. Let me wait to hear from you. Any questions? Any comments? Okay, so I do hope that you have gotten a thing or two in terms of employee engagement. And I do hope that you will be taking up the offer that we have. Please note that we are not charging you for anything, but we'd really, really like to have you on board and to have you take up the ECI. And let's see how we can help you just start checking however the size of your organization, whether it's 10 people, it's 5 people. Of course, 5 people, you have a lot of information already. It's 100 people, it's 300 people. We'd be willing to work through with you and get this on board. So that's it from us today at Profiles International. And let me wish you a lovely evening, a lovely rest of the evening, and God bless you. And we'll see you at the next presentation. Take care and bye-bye.